What you're about to hear is a little different than my normal episodes. There's no guest today, and it's just me. I want to take an opportunity to talk about something that I was genuinely excited about last season, what I learned from it, and why I ultimately decided to break up with JT. Let's get into it.
Photographer of the Year. Let's hear it for Dan Shelley. Shellda Photos.
Courage in my veins, running uphill, a wildfire heart that never stays still. I was born with a spark my daddy couldn't kill.
Welcome back to the Shellda podcast. If you're new here, first and foremost, my name is Dan Shelley. As a lot of you know, I go by Shellda. I think everybody in the paintball scene knows me as Shellda. So let's just dive into it. Today's episode, it's not a rant. This isn't about drama. It's simply a reflection and 4 lessons that I wish I had learned sooner, and something I really want to talk about and address the questions that a lot of you have on why I left JT. Hey, super quick before we go any deeper into this episode talking about sponsorships, I actually want to give a shout out to some of my sponsors. So first and foremost, I partnered with ProDNA to have an absolutely amazing year. We've got a lot of cool things planned for 2026. Some different t-shirt straps you're going to see, some other merchandise. It's going to be pretty awesome. So definitely stick around to the podcast and make sure you follow me on Instagram because we're going to be dropping a lot of really cool things this year. And then for anyone that knows me, family means so much to me. I have always been a big family person. So partnering with BFP Gear again for 2026, it just means so much to me. You know, Junior and Gina Brown have taken me sort of into their paintball family and have really treated me like one of their own, which is why I love what they do, because that's how they treat everyone that walks into their stores and everyone that shops online at BFP Gear. They treat all of their customers truly like family. And my favorite thing about partnering both with ProDNA and BFP Gear is you can buy ProDNA gear on BFP Gear's website. So after you're done listening to this podcast, head over to the description. I've got some links down there where you can grab some ProDNA gear and of course pick up some of the latest deals on BFP Gear. All right, back to the episode. Normally this is where, I would be sitting down with players, with owners, creators, referees, and just other people across the paintball industry. But today's a little different. In this solo episode, and well, you might start seeing these sprinkled in throughout the year if you've seen some of my earlier episodes. This is something that I've wanted to talk about for a few months, not because it's controversial, but because it's honest. And that's what this podcast has always really been about. It's about honesty, and it's been about the why behind the topics. So today I want to talk about why I left JT, and more importantly, what that experience taught me about opportunities, alignment, and saying yes before asking the right questions, because that's what I've really learned throughout this. So again, this isn't a rant. This isn't calling anyone out. I love JT, and I will continue to be proud to wear the JT ProFlex, some of their gear. This is just simply a reflection and sharing the why behind the decision. If you're someone trying to build a brand in paintball, maybe a player, a team, or like what a lot of new media members are doing, this episode's for you, and it's going to hit pretty deep. So on the surface level, this opportunity looked like everything I could have asked for. Let's go back to 2024 World Cup. I was invited to be part of the brand new JT Elite line. And that's really where this whole thing started, was standing on the field during that World Cup. So as the match is going on, literally, again, standing on the field at World Cup, a JT employee comes up to me and we were just chatting about the year and about brands. And I had mentioned that I had interest in JT. And that's where I first learned that JT was working on a new program to feature elite people in paintball. And they asked if I would be a part of their program. And so it's crazy to think that this whole thing started during just a quick conversation in between matches during a World Cup. And so for those that don't know, and if you haven't seen it yet, The JT Elite line had only 4 people in it. It had Ryan Greenspan, Thomas Taylor, Matt the Gym Rat, and of course, myself. 4 people that were considered at the time legends in the game, people whose names and brands were going to be tied directly together with a brand new clothing line within JT. And if I'm being honest, I was incredibly excited. Just to be in the same conversation with those 3 others was mind blowing. You see, JT is and was and could potentially forever will be the brand I had always wanted to work for and work with. Flashback to when I was a kid, I had always worn a JT mask. I had seen JT in all the magazines. All the pro players were wearing JT, Dynasty, Avalanche, and the rest of the teams way back then. And to me, that was the creme de la creme. There was no other company at the top of the mountain than JT. So when this opportunity came up, I obviously didn't hesitate and I said yes. And that's really where the first lesson starts, because I said yes without really thinking about it and without really doing any of my own due diligence. I said yes without having a contract in place, not because anyone forced me, not because I was misled, but simply because I was just so excited at the opportunity. I believed in the vision, I trusted the brand, and I still do to this day. And I assumed we would just figure out all the details along the way. That assumption mattered more than I realized. For those that have seen it, the Elite line was brand new and it was something new to JT. And I'm pretty sure it was new across the paintball industry. I don't really think there was ever anything kind of like the Elite line in the past. The 4 of us were going to have our own specific clothing line, our own marketing and advertising backed behind us, and really putting our face out there as the product to help drive sales of our individual brands. Now, with any type of business where you're introducing something new, of course, there's going to be growing pains. How do you get all the new products on the website? What does it look like? What's the marketing behind it? All the way down to the simple details. And what are the designs that we're going to be coming up with? What are the quantities we should order? What sizes? What materials do we use? The fit of the product? How are we going to promote it? And this is where I really learned what looks good on paper, or at least in my mind, sometimes doesn't translate well to real products. So you see, during one of the last NXL events of the last season, I had an opportunity to sit down with Ryan Greenspan just off to the side while the event was happening. And we had a really good in-depth, maybe 20 to 30-minute conversation. And for those that don't know, Ryan is an absolute marketing genius. And we talked about the Elite program, and I started to hint at some of the challenges that I was having. And in true Ryan fashion, he dropped a lot of incredible knowledge on me about what it takes to grow a brand and how to display your brand on clothing. And up until that point, every piece of clothing I had ever designed in paintball that had the Shellda Photos brand or the Shellda Podcast brand on it somewhere, my logo was front and center. And that's what Ryan taught me was wrong. You see, Ryan's been putting out different clothing items for most of his career, dating back to 10, 15 years ago when he was even working with HK. He had his own line of clothing. And what he taught me was there's value in keeping your personal brand a little bit smaller and keeping the company logo a little bit bigger. That way it shows true collaboration. And see, unfortunately, I had already been pretty deep into the designs and I had already had a lot of products that were out the door and in production and on their way to, being sold, while Ryan was still working on his designs. And so again, I was super excited and already had hit the ground running. And I think that's where it really clicked for me. You see, the past few seasons, I've always done some type of Pod Pirate t-shirt that most of you probably are aware of. And that's one of the t-shirts that has always done the best for me in my career so far. But this was the first time I had put a shirt out where the Shellda Photos logo was huge on it. I mean, I'm talking it was all the way across the front chest. And without knowing it at the time, I said yes because I was so excited. for the designs that were just coming back in, and just to see my logo on the same t-shirt with a JT logo, even though I didn't feel like it 100% had hit the mark, I had still said yes to it because I had assumed, well, it was JT, so the products were going to sell like crazy no matter what the designs were. And so this one conversation with Ryan really taught me the importance of not just slapping my logos on t-shirts and really putting myself in your shoes, the customer's shoes, and wondering, would I actually want to wear this? Would I want to wear this at a paintball field? Would I want to wear this around town? And that is honestly a conversation I will forever be grateful for because it taught me so much about brands and about how to build a brand. And so the second learning opportunity was around communication. And as we know in paintball, that's one of the most critical things to a team's success, both on and off the field. Well, early on in the program, I noticed an opportunity in communication where something just kept getting dropped. I was on email threads with a few different people with inside the company talking about designs, sales, how we're going to launch it. And every time I would ask somebody a question, I would get a similar response back to, well, that's not my department. You have to ask somebody else. So now me, the face of one of the faces of this new line, I was getting caught in the middle of a lot of communication gaps. And this is something that I've noticed throughout paintball. So again, it's not just a JT problem. I think it's a lot of companies, whether they're small, they're medium, they're large. Oftentimes questions will get asked and people don't know who owns it specifically, or they know that it's not their job, so it gets passed on to somebody else. And when that happens, that's when the ball starts to drop, sort of like, passing a hot potato. I've heard from a lot of my friends and a lot of players, in the Austin or in the Texas scene are working with a bunch of different brands in paintball, and they're not getting responses back to, or they're throwing out questions that they're not getting answers back to. And I really think it's because a lot of these companies haven't really figured out a way to diverse roles or to have a set, almost like standard operating procedures for certain types of questions that come up. And so it really leaves the player or the brand or the teams caught in the middle. And so, like that, I found myself caught in the middle of these departments. And it got really frustrating. No one was malicious. No one was trying to do anything wrong or even trying to do the wrong thing. We just didn't have a clear communication, and there was no real clear structure. So small problems start to turn into ongoing friction, tie-in shipping delays, tie-in questions getting missed. The hardest part wasn't the delays. It wasn't the designs, because they were incredible. It was realizing that I actually didn't know what I was responsible for and what I was responsible for. And so again, this wasn't a JT problem. This was a me problem that I was starting to figure out. And so without having any type of contract in place, expectations lived in conversations, just buried deeper and deeper and deeper into these email threads instead of having true transparency and clarity. And when expectations aren't written down or somewhat formally put on paper, everyone remembers them differently. And so again, maybe a broken record here. This wasn't a JT problem. This was a me problem. And that's where I learned a ton. There was a moment where I had to ask myself a hard question. Not, is this a bad opportunity, but is this aligned with how I want to operate my brand going forward? And that's the first time where my honest answer was no, not because I didn't respect the brand, not because I didn't appreciate the opportunity, but because I realized I needed more structure to do my best work, more clarity per se. And something I learned throughout the year was I had a really good conversation with another member of the elite line, and they had talked about the details that went into their contracts. They had put in there so much detail to make sure that the launches were happening, to make sure that the payments were happening, there was just so much detail that I had assumed would naturally happen because of a handshake, because of a partnership. And to be honest, as a lot of you probably know, a lot of paintball business is done on handshakes versus formal deals, as many people in paintball are friends first and then they become business partners later or second down the road. And so throughout the year, there just was not a whole lot of structure that I come to figure out that I really needed. So there's four takeaways that I've learned from this opportunity that I really want to drive home. The first one, excitement is not a replacement for clarity. Two, being honored to be chosen doesn't mean you stop protecting your brand. Three, contracts don't kill trust. They actually protect relationships, especially when you've got a personal relationship mixed with business relationships. And then four, boundaries, right? One of the healthiest things, whether it's for paintball, personal relationships, working relationships, but when you have a new program like this, it needs patience, but patience still needs boundaries. And for me, I've always been an instant gratification kind of person. I want things immediately. And so this was really a challenging year. So I'm sharing this now because I know many people in paintball say yes to opportunities because they're just so afraid to lose them, or they're so nervous that they might not be able to work with a certain brand or company again. Sometimes brands reach out to them and say, "Hey, we want to sponsor you." And we get so excited. We don't pause and think, what's the short term, medium term, and long term effect of saying yes to this decision? Does this opportunity really make sense for me? And now I get it. Before all the haters hit the comments, I also know it's a very privileged spot to have a company reach out to me directly and want to sponsor me. I know that's not the norm. I know a lot of people listening to this podcast are in the divisional world where you have to reach out to the brands to work with them and to be sponsored by them. You're the ones having to ask permission. But the reason I'm saying this is, as you're looking into what brands you want to work with for the new year and for the next seasons to come, just take a moment, sit back, reflect. Does this make sense for me? Does it make sense for my team? Does it make sense for my brand? You see, paintball sponsorships have changed so much in the industry over the last 5, 10, even 20 years, even in the last year alone. And maybe that's something we'll dive into another solo episode. But when you're looking to work for different companies and work with different companies, just make sure you're asking around. Even if it's a right fit for you, ask other teams in your area. Ask them what their experience was like working with these different companies. And from that, you'll be able to learn and make the right decision for you. So I've been there, I've been in your shoes. And sometimes the biggest growth comes from realizing what you need to say no to in order to say yes to the right thing later. Now, I am so forever grateful for this opportunity. And honestly, it's one of the proudest things I've ever done in paintball is to be a part of the JT Elite line. All the awards, all the accolades, all the magazine articles, and my pictures have been everywhere. This podcast, being a part of that JT Elite line meant so much to me. And never in my wildest dreams, 4 years ago when I started this journey, or even back when I was a kid, if you had told me I would be one of 4 people and one of those other 4 people is Ryan Greenspan, that's just mind blowing to me. So I'll forever be thankful for the opportunity. And I genuinely wish success to whoever takes this program next, or to whoever continues to work with JT. So to end up, this chapter didn't end badly. It just didn't end clearly. And when I finally had the courage to email JT to break up, they were so professional in return. And they even kept the door open to work with them in the future. And they had so many nice things to say about, working together this past year. And it was just another reminder of why JT was such an amazing company to work with, and why they're still one of the, if not the number one company in all of paintball. So this experience, it just really changed how I approach partnerships moving forward. It changed how I ask questions, and it changed what I require to attach my name and my brand to something. It just taught me so much about self-value, and it was an opportunity for me to really look in the mirror and learn that I was undervaluing myself and I wasn't really protecting my brand. And that's something that directly started to take shape of what I'm trying to build next with this podcast, and where I really want this podcast to start to grow and start to move to. So, if you've seen some of the earlier episodes, you know what I'm talking about, and you know I want to grow and make this bigger than any of us can imagine. So, if this resonated with you at all, and if you've ever said yes to something a little too fast, you're not alone. We've all been there. And clearly, this episode shows that I've been there too. So thanks for listening. I'll catch you in the next one.